There we go. There we go. Well, you are here to meet some of the best of Boston and hear what we're up to. And so I'm Susan Musinski. I'm the executive director of the Social Innovation Forum. I'm going to give you a quick overview of what we do here in Boston. There we go, Social Innovation Forum. And we're here. What our work is in Boston is actually not just showcasing the best, but we do a lot of capacity building, both with entrepreneurs and innovators, and help them for years to actually build their capacity and grow their organizations, while we work with funders and investors to actually grow their capacity, to figure out where they want to do their impact, give their impact. And in the middle, we're building a marketplace. If you look at the middle of our model, we're building a marketplace so that people can get to know each other. And two of the three groups who are showcasing today have been through our work and actually understand kind of what it means to actually build their capacity and grow to the next level. So if you want to go on to the next slide. So one of the things I wanted to say is that Massachusetts is home to over 34,000 nonprofits. How many of you think that you could do diligence on 34,000 groups? There you go. Okay, so it's really hard to do that. It's really hard to figure out where do you want to put your time. If you're a funder, what do you want to invest in? And so there's a lot of different groups around here and around Classy that are doing that kind of vetting work to help the community say, here's a range of different kinds of groups who are interested in growth and interested in building capacity. And what I'd say is not only is Massachusetts part of the ecosystem, that Boston is certainly part of the innovation economy. And that's why we're so thrilled that Classy is here to actually be a part of that work. And one of the things that the Boston Chamber recently kind of recognized in doing a study of all these innovative cities around the country, that in spite of how far ahead the West Coast is in tech, that Boston is actually really well situated to actually be where the next growth phase happens, particularly around socially focused things, because the infrastructure of the universities and the tech community is really here and really ripe to grow. And so it's exciting that Classy kind of recognized that and came here to actually say we're going to have our base in Boston, a really innovative hub that actually cares not about innovation but about social innovation. So today you're going to have a chance to hear from three different exciting local groups. One is a nationally based organization that actually has a local footprint, and you're going to hear about their national but meet their local leader. One is an organization that's actually doing their work in India, but the leader and the founder is here. And the third is a for-profit social enterprise model that is actually looking at impact under a different lens. And so I'm going to introduce them one at a time. Each of those groups is going to have a 10-minute presentation, and then we're going to come back together for some Q&A. So the first group that I am really excited to bring up is Playworks. Some of you might have heard of them. As I say, they're based in 22 regions around the country. The Massachusetts base covers the state, though their core office is here. And I'm going to introduce Jonathan Gay. He has worked for Playworks Massachusetts since 2006. And one of the things he always says is he's really inspired by play. So if you meet Jonathan and you go to any of the Playworks events, he's playing games like rock, paper, scissors. He has a lot of kind of what I'd say games and tricks in his pockets. They've grown in the past several years from 7 schools to 40 schools in the Massachusetts region, and they serve over 25,000 students in their model. So in terms of spread, growth, replication, they're really able to create impact. Jonathan loves recess, and what I was saying is I asked him for a few hints. As a sports guy, does he like the Red Sox? He said that he did a thesis on Cuban baseball. So I think he understands sports from a lot of different lenses. And we're delighted to bring him up. Playworks was a 2010 social innovator with the Social Innovation Forum. So welcome, Jonathan.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay, so I'm going to do a quick activity with you all to try to pump up this crowd. There's only a few of us right in this room right now, so the goal is to show so much energy that we want to encourage others to come join us over here. Okay, so when I say classy, you need to respond and say collaborative. Okay, you ready? When I say classy, you're going to say collaborative. Ready? Classy. Collaborative. Classy. Collaborative. Classy. Collaborative. Okay, come on down. Come to our showcase over here. So I am John Gay from the Playworks. I'm representing our national organization. We're in 22 regions across the country. We're working with 1,200 elementary schools across the nation, okay? And our whole focus is on using the power of play to bring out the best in every kid. So let's just quickly set the context, okay? So you go to an elementary school. My personal experience at elementary school, I loved recess, like Susan said. Some days I jumped straight into the game. I got to play kickball, I had a good time. Some days I was on the sideline because I was getting teased because of my last name being Gay. Sometimes I saw cliques of kids forming on the sidelines, talking and being, just gossiping about what's going on in the elementary school, especially at that 4th and 5th grade level. Recess can be some of the best time of your day, okay? But it can also be one of the worst time of day for students in elementary schools. And Playworks is determined to solve that issue. Scroll through real quick. Our vision, like I said, is to ensure that every single kid can play every single day. Now, I started my Playworks career at an elementary school here in Boston, right on the other side of the harbor, called the Donald McKay Elementary School. It's 10 years ago today. This is the shirt I wore that day. No, it's not the same shirt. But it's the Playworks shirt that represented me as that adult that was going to get kids in the game and make sure that they felt safe and included at recess. Now, Playworks came out of this philosophy. Jill Violet, our president and founder, she had an adult that got her in the game when she was a kid growing up in Washington, D.C. My job as a Playworks coach was to do that same thing at that elementary school across the way. I had 580 kids at my school. 90% of them were considered low income. 95% of them were English as a second language learners. And so my one way to get through to these kids and build relationships to make sure school was safe and inclusive was through the power and play. One student, ironically from Cuba, Yuri, came to school, and you can click through the slide real quick. And he was one of those bullies at recess, okay? He could barely speak a word of English, okay? He was on the sidelines. When he was getting involved, it was in a very destructive manner. He'd be in the principal's office probably 2-3 times a week, and it was really ruining his entire learning experience at the elementary school. He was oftentimes getting involved, but it was oftentimes through fights. And there's many times I had to jump in there, break up any fights that he was having with fellow peers. That's what recess is for many kids across this nation, okay? It's not happy-go-lucky. Sometimes it is one of the most intrusive times a day for students. My job was to be that adult, that positive adult that's going to stop that chaos. And Playworks, sometimes it's a Playworks employee doing it. Sometimes it's adults who are trained by Playworks. Doesn't matter. Adults can help change the game at recess to ensure that kids feel safe and included. Now, Yuri, I found out with Yuri, he loved the game of soccer. Okay, like I say, he's from Cuba, he loved the game of soccer. We started to really connect from that emotional lens of, hey, get in the game, Yuri. I taught him how to give high fives when he was feeling upset. I taught him how to kind of resolve his conflicts and talk it out with his peers over who's in, who's out on the soccer field when the ball went out and whatnot. Yuri slowly made big gains as a student at that school. Like I say, when he started at that school, he had just moved here, he barely spoke a word of English. But as I got to know Yuri and as I got him in the game, he changed. He started to speak up more in class. He started to lead soccer at some days at recess, letting me go play other games with kids like kickball or foursquare and just help out other students. Yuri, by the end of that school year, we had shifted his behavior. Not only was he physically active, was he connecting through communication and social skills, but he was also really promoting the core values at recess that are going to make a school a special place and a safe, inclusive place for kids today. Playworks, we have proven that we can accelerate learning and health in elementary schools. We've proven that if you can create an effective and safe recess, you can create a positive environment in recess where kids feel safe and included, and ultimately we can change school culture, okay? Go to the next slide. So, quick break here. I can't be the play guy that comes up to the stage and doesn't do any play with you, okay? So if you go to a Playworks school today, you might hear an adult. It might be a Playworks person. It might be an adult that's been trained by Playworks. You might hear them yell across the recess yard, and you might just say, "Rock it out," or "Rochambeau." Raise your hand if you're familiar with "Rock it out" or "Rochambeau." Pretty good showing in the crowd. It's rock, paper, scissors, okay? Now the coach or whoever that adult they might yell it out, and they'll say, "Rock it out." And across the way, two kids who are about to come to blows on the four-square court on whether the person hit the ball in or out will quickly jump to a game of rock, paper, scissors show, and they will solve their issue in 30 seconds or less, okay? What might have taken 2 to 3 minutes previously to solve, it might have resulted being kids at the principal's office, has now been solved through a simple game of rock, paper, scissors, an effective game of play that's going to make sure that kids are safe and included on the recess yard. Now, I'm going to teach you all really quickly how to play rock, paper, scissors. Everyone put your playing field out in front of you. Like I said, we've got to play a little bit with Playworks. You make a fist like this, and we're going to do, on 3, it's going to go rock, paper, scissors, show. Now, I'm very intentional with the show. I grew up playing rock, paper, scissors, shoot. But I live here in Boston, and there is a youth violence epidemic. So part of changing culture through play is also changing culture through the language we use around play. So instead of saying shoot, I'm going to say rock, paper, scissors, show, okay? So on show, you can play a rock, a paper, or a scissors, okay? Scissors cuts paper, rock crushes scissors, paper covers rock, okay? Very simple. We're going to play best of 1, no best of 3, no best of 5. Everybody in the audience versus me, okay? Everybody versus me. I love this part of the presentation. So everyone put your playing field out in front of you, and on the count of 3, we're going to do rock, paper, scissors, show. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Rock, paper, scissors, show. Awesome. Keep it out in front of you right here. Raise your hand if you played rock. Few people out in the audience played rock. No big deal. We might play one extra tiebreaker round, okay? If you played scissors, raise your hand. No big deal. I crushed you. So I get to stay in the four-square game, okay? And raise your hand if you played paper. Oh, we got a lot of people who came out on top. No big deal. I'll go to the end of the line so that game can keep going and kids can keep playing, okay? Go to the next slide real quick. Like I say, Playworks has proven that a safe and effective recess can have tremendous impact throughout the entire school day. So we did a random control trial with Mathematica Policy Research in Stanford University back in 2013, and it found some amazing things, okay? Like I say, it all starts with that positive adult at recess that's making sure kids feel safe and included. Kids are feeling more safe. They're showing up at school. They want to be there. They feel included. The second thing we saw is that there's less bullying at Playworks schools. Now, we're not an anti-bullying program, okay? We're not talking about bystanders or upstanders. We're teaching kids through play how to communicate their feelings, how to resolve their issues using rock, paper, scissors. It resulted in a 43% decrease in bullying at Playworks schools across the region. The next thing we saw is that kids were more vigorously physically active. Okay, so all of us know if you take a break during the day, we do walking club in my office, we come back to our desks more focused, okay? Same thing we saw at Playworks schools. When kids were getting vigorously physically active, they were actually more focused, and they were getting their daily doses of physical activity. The next thing we saw is that behavior issues, discipline things, referrals, they were going down in school. So the line at the principal's office at the end of recess was no longer. Playworks was solving that, making sure recess was safe and effective. And lastly, this is the one I love the most, even though I don't have favorites or anything, I'm a recess coach, is that we actually saw a focus back in the classroom, okay? And so actually what our evaluators from Stanford and Mathematica did is they actually followed the kids at the end of recess back to the classroom and see how much faster they got into classroom learning. So they actually had a timer and they were following them back, and they found out that at Playworks school with our programming, they were transitioning back to learning 5 to 7 minutes faster per day. You add that up over a course of an entire school year, kids at Playworks schools were recovering 20 hours of instructional time, getting back into learning much faster. So Playworks, by showing that recess can become a safe place where kids can play, can totally transform the entire school day. Go to the next slide. So Playworks, like Susan mentioned, like I mentioned at the beginning, we are currently serving 1,200 elementary schools across the nation, okay? 22 different regions. Our goal is to serve every kid. okay? We're going to do it in time, but our big goal is by 2020, we want to serve 3.5 million children. Okay, there are 35 million elementary school children across the United States. If we can reach 10% of them, we'll hit a tipping point in using play as a movement to change schools. That's 7,000 schools. That's 5,800 more schools than we're in today that we will reach by 2020. Next slide. The final thing I'll say today is how are we going to get there? It's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of believers in play like yourselves here today. But we're going to start with what we do already. Coach model, team up, and pro. Okay? Coach is what I was. I'm running programming at a school. Team up is where I rotate among to many schools providing consultative services. And then the pro is where we actually will train adults at schools themselves. So here in Massachusetts, we've trained entire school districts like Brockton and Fall River on how to do this themselves so that they can have safe, effective schools. We're going to expand and we're going to offer new services. We're going to offer online learning and giving people the opportunity to go to our website and take classes online so that they can learn these same tools on their own. We're also going to invest in district support services and get all districts using play as a way to solve their school issues. Lastly, we're going to empower others to do it alongside of us. Okay? Powered by Playworks, we're going to certify schools. If they are doing it already, we can help certify them and give them that gold standard for play as a way to change their school culture. We're going to have schools take the Play Pledge, get them to sign into like a Bill of Rights of what play is all about. And lastly, we're going to find partners in play who are doing it already. Go to the next slide. We ask you to jump in with us if you believe in play. If you want to play more rock, paper, scissors, keep staying in line with Playworks, learn more about us, and help us get to 3.5 million children by 2020. Okay? Thank you.
Rock, paper, scissors, and walking clubs, I'm in. Sounds fun. If only we could do that downtown every day of the week, I think we'd have a better community and people would be kinder. So anyways, thanks, Jonathan. Great to hear about the Playworks model. Our next kind of showcase entrepreneur innovator is Abhishek, who is the founder of Arise, which is a program that actually is based in India. He began work with a vision to create a platform for promoting research and projects on contemporary tools and techniques and educational packages to work with visually challenged people. He said it's the children that really keep him going. So the project is actually working with kids in India who are visually challenged. He's inventive. He's spent a lot of time at MIT studying, combining tech and business and kind of entrepreneurship and innovation. And what he says is for fun, he loves to do things like skydiving and painting. And so he's going to jump up on the stage and paint you pictures of the work that happens in India.
I didn't realize this was a casual place, but I think that helps. Today, I'm going to talk to you about Gurpreet. Gurpreet is a visually challenged student at Institute for the Blind, Chandigarh. When I first met Gurpreet in 2008, I was researching a map and a diagram reader for her, where she could learn from maps and diagrams on her own. When I asked her questions about it, she responded to me saying, huh, meaning yes, na, meaning no. She was talking to me in Punjabi while I was asking her questions in English. She's very shy, or was very shy at that point in time, and she was also kind of not that outgoing. I talked to a lot of her friends who are also visually challenged, and I realized that the problem of this self-confidence is not just with her. It's with over 3 million differently abled children in India, children with special needs. Over 1/3 of them are at home, and about 70% are in rural areas. These children who are at home and in rural areas don't have access to any special education resources as such. Let's look at the life of our children like Gurpreet, who are there in schools. She studies at Institute for the Blind in Chandigarh. She lives in a dormitory provided by the school less than a mile away. There's a bus that comes and picks her up, drops her to school, picks her up in the evening, drops her to dormitories. She basically interacts just with her parents and teachers and her friends. Her school and her home forms the entire life just because there's no accessibility, even like simple pavements for the disabled in India, in most of the cities. When I talked to her friends, their friends of Gurpreet, they told me that she really liked listening to Punjabi music. I talked to Gurpreet about Punjabi music, and she says, I like Punjabi folklore, whereas I like Punjabi beats. Anyway, there was an engaging 15 minutes conversation that I had with her, and that kept me thinking, music is really engaging for them, and education is not? Education for me at that time meant to develop a goal, to pursue a career, to have a professional ambition. For her, it meant like a burden, a chore, a pain. And that's something that I really wanted to solve. So I called up my friends, and we started to learn with them. What we did is that we sat with them in the computer training classes. We understand how they interacted with technology. We also observed that children from all grades checked out the audio resources or the audio MP3 players from the library that the school had. We observed that the medium of instruction is Hindi or Punjabi, not English. They usually speak in their local language. This limits their English fluency skill set, and it greatly hampers the job opportunities available to them later in life. So we thought, how about we create something bilingual which has a local language so that they can understand, also has English, so that they can also develop this fluency skill sets. What we did for the next year is to create self-learning audio resources for the visually challenged. We went about it in 3 phases. In the first phase, we created these audio resources. We talked with Gurpreet and her friends and basically took their feedback. From that, we learned some 2 interesting things. They wanted bilingual audio resources, but they wanted it line by line. Second, they wanted the pace to be really, really slow, especially for the English part, so that they could understand how to express a sentence from Hindi and how to express an idea in English language. We reformatted our content and we did phase 2. In the phase 2, we took their feedback again and realized that some of the concepts didn't really relate to them. For example, color doesn't mean anything to them. So, for example, when we started working out with an example of a map and diagram, like a water cycle, something that we see in a water cycle diagram is a cloud, which is made by condensation, and rain happens by precipitation. For you, or for me, a cloud is something like a white, fluffy, beautiful thing in the summer sky. And let me paint a picture in also white, fluffy thing in an oil painting. For them, cloud is something which has monstrous thunderstorms and as well as rain showers. That's how they relate to cloud. So we created a water cycle diagram, and we also created other concepts based on their experience, so that the experiences that they can relate to. Then we reformatted our audio material. We then went to phase 3. In the phase 3, we identified that there were still some missing gaps about some content. We realized, and we were humble enough, that we couldn't solve it. So what we did is that we went to the older students and their parents to help us out. We asked them to explain these missing gaps to us so that we could then create an explanation for them and then repackage in the final audio format. In this audio format we developed our methodology, SPECIAL. Specialized, perceptual, experiential, concept, instructional, augmented learning. Let me simplify it. Special means, like special, perceptual, experiential means that we focus on the experiences that they have through their specialized senses. For the visually challenged, we focus on the experiences that they have through auditory and tactile. Based on these experiences, we then relate these experiences to the concepts and create audio instructional material out of it. This instruction material is augmented learning. It's for out-of-classroom self-learning. We don't want to replace in-classroom teaching. That's our methodology. Today, our special educational resources have reached over 1,000 students, visually challenged students in India. Our engagement levels with our audio resources has gone up from 35% for traditional audio resources to our SEM, special educational modules, at 96% on average. The reason when we investigated is that the traditional audio resources are typically recordings of the existing material. These are focused more on a spectrum of blindness, which is more on partial blindness, who can understand some of the concepts, such as color. What we did was to focus at the entire spectrum of blindness and to help them understand through their learning process by creating these special education modules. We also saw a bump in test scores for 21%. This is related with matriculation across all subjects on average. This is a picture in which we involved one of the teachers, Nirmala Madam, who is a computer science teacher for visually challenged. Today, we have developed over 300 special education modules across all subjects, even including computer science. Gurpreet today can learn from these 300 special education modules. Not only these modules are for coursework, we have also created some storybooks, some encyclopedia, and also an audio dictionary. What's nice about the audio dictionary part is that Gurpreet actually came up with that idea. She raised that request to us to create an audio dictionary for her. What we realized looking at that is that we were helping her to develop self-confidence in herself, in her ability to do things, to learn things on her own, and ask us to develop things for her. That is something that we want to continue to develop for the 3 million differently abled children with special needs. Through self-learning, give them a skill set to develop self-confidence, as well as English language fluency, that would later impact their employability outcomes. Thank you.
High five. Abhi, thanks. Gurpreet and the other students in India are really lucky to have had such an innovation to take them really to a different place in terms of their learning and their opportunities. And so it's exciting to see what can happen and how you can transform that, particularly to rural agencies, and get many more young people kind of closer to their opportunities. So thanks. So our third innovation in Boston, you're going to meet next, is both working overseas and working in the US with an innovation, as I mentioned, that is a social enterprise, so a for-profit entity that's set up and structured to actually solve problems in a range of ways. And you're going to have a chance to meet Tish Skolnick. She's the CEO of Grit, and she co-founded Grit with a number of classmates, also an MIT person, one of her classmates right here, Mario. She and her co-founders, when they were in a project, needed to develop a wheelchair, and they created the Freedom Chair, which is an all-terrain mobility vehicle that helps people with disabilities move beyond the pavement. And so Abhi was talking about challenges for the visually impaired. This is challenges for physically challenged. And they invented this wheelchair and spent 4 years kind of studying it before determining that it was a marketability, real product there, and turned it into the company of Grit. And so in addition to the Freedom Chair, they now have the Leverage Freedom Chair, which you can see out in the showcase area, even sit in it and touch it and talk to them more about what it is. Tish has actually lived in the countries where the wheelchair has been implemented. One of the things she wrote is she climbed Mount Kilimanjaro when she was over there doing work. She spent time in 6 out of the 7 continents, and she likes to make banana bread. So welcome, Tish, and let's hear about what you're up to.
Thank you, Susan. Thanks, everybody, for joining us here today. So I'd like you to start by imagining you live in a developing country, and you've got to travel a long distance on very rough terrain just to get to work or to school. And now imagine instead of walking over that terrain, you're pushing yourself over that terrain in a wheelchair. For Ashok, who I met in India, that's his reality. He fell from a tree several years ago and sustained a spinal cord injury. And he was sent home from the hospital in that standard wheelchair you see him sitting in, much like a few other wheelchairs that are distributed around the world by a few large nonprofits. Now the problem is, those wheelchairs just aren't designed for that rough and challenging terrain. They're really hard to push, they break easily, and when they do, spare parts are not available to fix them. 65 million people across the developing world have the same problem that Ashok does. They're stuck at home and they're not able to participate in their society and their community. I first learned about this problem while I was studying mechanical engineering at MIT. And together with a few of my classmates, we started by throwing some science at this problem. And we went back to biomechanics and we looked at the ergonomics of how could you best harness the power of the upper body to propel yourself. We looked at the type of terrain that people were traveling on, whether it was a rough sandy coastline or a big mountainous area, the foothills of Kilimanjaro. We talked to hundreds of wheelchair riders. We asked them what was failing them with the existing devices. We asked them what they wanted out of a device, how far they wanted to go, what types of materials or storage they might like to take with them. We really tried to understand the problem as best we could from their lens. And we looked at what parts were available. We'd seen too many wheelchairs discarded behind a warehouse, behind somebody's house, because it broke and it couldn't be fixed. And what we quickly realized is that bikes are really common. The parts are really standardized, they're mass-produced, and you can find them everywhere. You're much more likely to find a bike shop in a rural village than you are to find a wheelchair shop. And so could we harness the availability of these bike parts in our design? And we came up with an idea for a lever system where you could essentially change gears just by changing your hand position on the levers. And we'll take a look at a quick video of it in action.
To go fast, the user grasps the levers near the pivots, pushing through a large angle with every stroke. When the going gets tougher, the user can simply slide his hands up the levers to create more leverage and higher torque at the wheels. This means the LFC can travel up to 80% faster than a wheelchair on the road and produce 53% higher peak wheel torque, enabling it to go off-road like no other mobility aid available.
So this all didn't happen overnight. We've been working on this product, prototype after prototype, several large field trials where we gave chairs to individuals who used them for several months and then followed up and provided feedback to us. At the core of all of this work is our user-driven design process. So you might have heard in one of the earlier panels the importance of actually talking to the people who are going to use your product and understanding what they want to do with it. That's been at the core of our entire design process and what I believe has allowed us to develop the product that we have today. And being a bunch of engineers from MIT, we wanted to add some numbers, some data to back up all of the qualitative research that we were doing. So I'll spare you the gory details of what's up there on the graphs, but the meat of that is we actually designed our own data acquisition system to collect biometric data while people were using our chair, while they were using standard wheelchairs. So we could quantitatively show the performance improvement using our product over existing wheelchairs. So this is Ashok, who I introduced you to at the start of the presentation. He received one of our chairs during our field trial in India. This is his commute home. When we met him, he wasn't working. He had previously run a tailoring business, but he closed it after his accident and he was at home. He received one of our chairs in our field trial in India in 2011, and he tells us that the very next day, he rolled right back into town and opened his shop. And I've been there and I've seen his shop and I see the people that he employs now, and I've met the family that he's now the breadwinner for. And it's pretty awesome to actually see this transition into the world and make an impact in somebody's life. So how do we do it? Overseas, we work with a network of NGOs and aid agencies who are on the ground, who know the need, who have the appropriate staff to make sure that individuals are trained and fit appropriately. We've distributed over 2,000 chairs in over 20 countries, and we just recently won a grant to upgrade our supply chain and take our logistics to the next level. And along the way, we've learned that there are a lot of challenges faced by wheelchair riders right here in the United States. There are cobblestones, there are grassy fields, there's a glorious beach that somebody wants to go to but just can't push through in a regular wheelchair. So we went back to our user-driven design process. We talked to hundreds of wheelchair riders right here in the US to understand what their needs are and how they differed from those that we were serving overseas. We launched a new version of the product in late 2014 on Kickstarter, and here's a short clip from our video. So we took our lever drivetrain and this three-wheel frame and the use of bike parts, all the things that worked really well overseas, and we repackaged them to meet the needs that US wheelchair riders described to us. One of the main differences is that the riders that we're serving overseas mostly live in rural villages and don't have cars, so the need to take it apart and put it in a trunk wasn't there. That's a big need here in the US. Almost everybody we talked to rightly pointed out that the best trail or the best beach is probably not right outside your door, and they want to be able to take their chair with them. The bike parts are different. The bike part standards are different. So we can still use bike parts, but we have to upgrade them and make sure it's something that if you do have a problem, you can get a spare at your local bike shop here in a place like Boston. And the new version that we launched in the US market, we're entirely manufacturing in the United States. Gives us a close turnaround, a close relationship with our manufacturer so we can move things quickly and address problems if they arise. And we're also able to support the American economy. Since the product has been out in the US for the past year, we've been most surprised at the breadth of activities that people are doing with it and the diversity of types of individuals that are using it. So everybody from the young woman in Colorado with a chronic illness who now goes hiking in that beautiful mountain range with her service dog, to the returning veteran who wanted to do a mud run with his friends and is able to overcome obstacles as a team together using our technology, to the friends who just want to hang out in the park and enjoy their socializing together.
I work out 7 days a week. I have a foundation called Disabled But Not Really.
Well, I want to be the first wheelchair user to section hike the Oregon part of the PCT trail.
To be able to coach and go out in the field and teach my son.
I would love to be able to just go out on the beach.
Go see the Northern Lights.
Promoting active lifestyle.
Talking to the newly injured.
To know that there's life after injury.
I mean, being disabled does not mean you have limits.
Not giving up and fighting back.
There's a lot of life beyond the pavement, and we're thrilled that we could be helping these individuals here in the United States and around the world to expand their worldview and get where they want to go. Thank you very much.
So we're going to facilitate some Q&A, and before we go out to kind of ask questions from the crowd, what I'd love to do is to just turn to these three entrepreneurs and ask them personally what drove you to actually focus your career on the social sector? Because all of you have skills, you had a lot of choices, like why dive so deep? You know, why work so hard? What's in it for you?
Yeah, so happy to go first. So my involvement with GRID and with this product started as a class project at MIT, and I was fortunate enough to spend a couple of summers and a year or so after graduating working overseas in East Africa, and really got to understand this problem. And I think being able to also see the impact that I could have as an engineer and as a social innovator, being able to actually connect that outside of the classroom is really meaningful. And I think what keeps me going consistently in this is that I still get to meet the people that I'm having an impact on.
Great.
Yeah. Similar to Tish, I started out inventing a map and diagram reader. It started out as an undergrad project, and I worked with Visually Challenged from 2006 to 2010 on this technology. While working with them, I realized what I was helping them do is to learn by themselves, like self-learning. And they didn't have any simple self-learning resources while I was trying to solve this complicated problem. So I went out and we developed a nonprofit platform on which we can really develop self-learning focused resources for the disabled children.
So for me, it's two things. I would say, first of all, you might have heard me comment at the beginning around being bullied in elementary school. So with the last name Gay, 4th and 5th grade, 6th grade, when I was at recess, probably one of the worst times of my day. And there was often days I did not want to be at school. And it was happening during that chaotic time of recess in the lunchroom. So that's a personal perspective. On the second thing, I love Playworks because of the simplicity of the program and the model. We can support every single kid at the school. We serve every kid. Our goal is to make sure every kid gets involved. Everything from the uber competitive kid, making sure that they feel like they can get others included, to the kid who's on the sideline. And ultimately, we'll change the school day for every single one of those children.
Yep. John, can you speak to the benefits of being a local branch of a national and what amplified impact actually means to you?
Yeah, so as I said, I started with Playworks in Massachusetts when we launched here in just 6 schools back in 2006. We have an incredible national movement around play. We're all committed to the same mission, so there's a lot of resources that we share that can go towards that mission. And we do a lot of problem solving and resource sharing amongst the different regions across the United States. I know in Detroit, the big issue is around bullying and fighting, and so some of the resources that they've developed, we're able to now use in our schools in Massachusetts. So being a part of a national movement with a national mission has brought us all closer together.
Great. I've got a quick question for Abhi. You're here, everybody else is in India. How do you motivate and kind of move the movement forward being so far away?
Yeah. Quick response is, first, we do have some volunteers here. I'm sorry that didn't come out before, but we have partnerships with MIT in their Mystery program, and as well as in Northeastern. We get some volunteers here which do a lot of online work for us. As well as we have a lot of, as Susan mentioned, we have a lot of volunteers in India as well. What I do is basically my whole Sunday schedule is covered in calls. Right from 10 a.m. till 3 p.m., I'm on half-an-hour calls. And I only take Saturday off. So that's how I manage it. We do have engaged volunteers, engaged leadership volunteers in India itself to lead this forward. And where we want to pivot it to is to share our methodologies with others in India, so that, as well as elsewhere, so that they can develop these resources themselves.
Yep. And back to Tish and the classroom piece, how did you make a decision that you could go from this is a classroom project to this can be my livelihood?
Yeah, I think I owe a fair amount to the supportive ecosystem here in Boston. So, transitioning out of MIT, we had a couple successful field trials. We had people who wanted to buy our product. We realized there was an opportunity here to really do something. And so we decided to start a company and had really great support from MIT, from Mass Challenge, from the Social Innovation Forum, in helping us figure out all the missing pieces. We knew the product side really well, or at least we thought we did, but we had no idea about all of the unique challenges we would face in actually launching it, the supply chain logistics and the marketing. And so I think there was a lot of really great support that we received from some key organizations here in Boston that helped us make that big leap.
Great. Great. How about questions from the audience? Let's hear some. There we go. Wait. Mm-hmm.
Tish, I think you touched on this, just the ecosystem of innovation in Boston. I guess, do you want to expand on that? Why Boston? What are some of the advantages of being in Boston? And then what are the challenges? What are the holes that need to be filled in this innovation ecosystem?
Yeah, so the question, if you guys didn't hear it, was about what are some of the unique supportive aspects of the ecosystem here in Boston and some of the challenges perhaps in this location. I think for one thing, there are so many other great companies, nonprofits, startups that are all trying to bring their ideas to life, and so I think we got a lot of support and drew a lot of energy in being able to connect with those. So whether it was in the Social Innovation Forum with a small, 3 or 4 companies cohort, or it was in Mass Challenge with 125 other startups, whether they be nonprofits or for-profits. So I think that sort of energy and that excitement has been really great for us. We were able to learn a lot from a lot of these other organizations. I think on the challenge side, mostly around funding. The whole idea of social entrepreneurship, social business, social enterprise is still pretty new. And I think people are figuring out what it means to them, and so in thinking about where to look for funding, perhaps might have had more success had we gone to another coast, but we managed to find success here, and so we're happy to stay.
And one of the things that came out last night at an Ashoka gathering is that there's 5 kind of key cities that are really hubs of innovation. And I think, as you said, if you are in a hub of innovation, likely you're going to meet other people and other people and other people, and that it's easier to innovate when the culture is about innovation. And luckily and happily for all of these groups, Boston is one of those hubs. So other questions? Let's see those hands fly. Covered everything. Here we go. Wait, she's got, I think, how much does it cost?
So the 2 products are quite different. The one we make overseas sells for about $300. The one we make in the United States, which has been redesigned, sells for just under $3,000. In both of the markets, they're very price competitive with the other products on the market. Almost as much as we sell it for.
Okay, we got a question over here. We're making you run back and forth. That's part of Classy and part of the Playworks gym energy.
I could have met you halfway. Within the social entrepreneurship space, I'm always torn between when looking at a competitive kind of analysis, a landscape analysis, how do you determine the difference between competition versus opportunities for collaboration within your own businesses? And what's that experience been like for each of you?
Great. Jonathan, you want to start with that one?
Yeah, so the question as I heard it is, how do you decide between competition versus collaboration? And so Playworks here in Massachusetts, we fit into a robust social innovation sphere around education. So we're working in elementary schools across the region, and there's a lot of other incredible nonprofits in the same realm, Citizen Schools, City Year. For us, we really look at it as a way, we're all here to support the whole child, okay? And so that child needs more resources, and we all can work together to provide unique resources to ensure that those kids are growing as individuals and getting the education that they deserve. The other great thing about collaboration versus competition is that we all complement one another and can pass kids off to one another's programs, and to make sure that after a kid finishes in the Playworks Elementary, they can go work with another nonprofit in the middle school space. So there's a lot of space on how we collaborate and how we're making sure that we're serving the whole child approach.
Right. That's a very interesting question. I have 2 comments on that. First is, if you look at the tech industry, the word is competition. So if you want to, let's say, start something and you want to look at competitive analysis and then do something on top of it, yeah, I think it's a great framework to approach and to start off, because that helps you find what are the needs which are not being addressed. So if you look at the social sector landscape, and if you see that a lot of institutions are doing this, but this particular thing is not being done by anyone, then there's a space for you to play. So that's how I would look at competitive analysis. In terms of, to my second comment, and more towards Jonathan's point, is that we should not look at, when in operations, not look at the entire framework as competition. They are more like partners, because for me, if the schools or the traditional audio resources hadn't existed, people would not have had MP3 players or simple Nokia phones. So I would not have been able to work on top of that platform. So if you're doing something innovative, you can always use leverage the existing resources, and that's really useful. The other part of that is that we had to really message our special education modules audio as self-learning, out-of-classroom teaching, which are augmenting the classroom teaching. So we had to even put it in our messaging. This is not to replace teachers. This is not to replace the other resources. It's just for the benefit. That's the other way that you really want to approach it from a partnership standpoint.
So I actually like to answer that question because we're actually building an ecosystem. So Social Innovation Forum is actually looking at, all sorts of people doing all sorts of work. And I think that we always say that there's so much more room in collaborative work than saying you're my competitor. And what we've found is that there's plenty of room in social change for everybody to be at the table. And that if we're actually working together, we have much more chance of actually moving the needle and actually creating impact than if we're saying that's your space, that's my space. And so I actually think that if people in all different venues are kind of looking at things together, the real social change is likely to move forward, at least in smaller increments. Other questions? Let's have a question. Should I call on someone?
You can ask.
What?
You can ask a question.
I can ask a question. I think I'll do that. I didn't write any down. But what I'd love to hear from each of you is, what do you think the future is for the kind of work you're doing? If you're looking 5 or 10 years down the road, how hard is it to make a real impact? And what are the challenges that are in your way? Anybody who wants to start?
Gosh. So I guess one of our big challenges, particularly for the work that we do overseas, is the logistics of all of it. Oftentimes the people who need a wheelchair like ours are in remote villages. It's hard to reach them. It's hard to get things across borders. So we're excited about a new program that USAID is running, which is trying to tackle this logistics problem. They've recognized that the solution is there, and the necessary partners in country are there, but that there's this really challenging logistics and distribution piece. And so they're trying to help solve that through a series of supply chain upgrades that we're excited to be part of. Similarly, there are still sort of logistics and supply chain issues here in the US in actually trying to get our product to people who need it. Things that are primarily used outdoors, wheelchairs and other mobility aids used outdoors, are not covered by anybody's insurance company. They'll only cover something that you're going to use indoors, which is fine, but not everybody lives their whole life indoors. And so that's something that we still have to overcome. But that being said, there's been a lot of interesting other organizations that have popped up in between to help solve that and help close that gap. And so like the Veterans Administration is actually really proactive and really sort of at the front in what they're providing. Doesn't matter if it's covered by insurance. If it's something that's going to actually improve somebody's life, particularly a returning veteran, they're going to cover it. So we're excited to see how that logistics and supply chain kind of grows around us and helps us get our product to people who need it.
Anybody else?
Yeah. Great question. So for us, the future is that we would want to partner up with other nonprofits or other schools who can use our process methodology and then create their own resources. The reason is there are like N number of languages in India. You would know it. Yeah. So even on a 10 rupee note, it is printed in like 17 languages, which is not even representative at all for the breadth of the Indian languages. So that's one challenge. Second challenge is the internet access, and how much access do you really have? So you might have a computer lab, but then that's like on Windows XP or like Windows 95, and then like if children learn on that, they can't really go and work on that technology. So that's the problem of the access, where the access is there, but it's not really access. And the way that we look forward is to just create more awareness. There are very interesting nonprofits who work in their own domain, but it's very fragmented. And we think there can be more work done for all of the nonprofits to actually share with each other and then create some common path forward.
So with respect to my work, just a quick audience participation here. How many of you have kids? Just by a show of hands. Not many of us. But what I will say is I have a 2-year-old and I have a 3-month-old. And so the future for Playworks is parents, aunts, uncles, when they are choosing schools for their children, to ask the question of principals and teachers, how is recess at your school? Is it safe? Is it inclusive? Ask questions like, are your kids getting plenty of opportunities to be playing? And what does it look like? Are there adults participating? That's what the future is in store for us. And we think if we can get to 3.5 million children, we'll hit that tipping point where it's part of the conversations around great schools have great play.
Yep. I'm going to ask another question. Oh, okay, you're giving me the 5 minutes. I'm going to ask a question. I keep looking up at showcasing the best of Boston, and so I want to get back to Boston and have you each speak about something in Boston that's best for you, and it can be connected to your product. It might be great to use the chair around Faneuil Hall, or there might be some really great place. Or it could just be someplace you love to go that feels innovative and fun, like the swings in the Innovation District. And if you haven't been there, check out the swings, especially at night, because they're all lit up. And so what's innovative? What's exciting? Anybody have a thought?
I'll start us off. So I'm a Boston resident, live in Rosendale, really proud of our city. And I've been working with Playworks in Boston for 10 years, okay? And so in the 10 years I've been working in Boston, I've worked with probably 50 Boston elementary schools, probably over 100 companies, probably about over 25 different universities. And I think there's one thing unique about Boston is there's an outpouring of support from everybody to get involved. Sometimes it's just through a volunteer, and I want to come out and volunteer at a school. Sometimes it's I want to support your program and I want to give you funding to do it. Sometimes it's just let me get my hands wet and do it with you. So I think there's a lot of resources around people in Boston through the universities, through the companies, through the schools themselves that really care about the social issues facing our city, and I think that makes Boston unique.
I love Boston. I went to MIT and it was great experience. MIT is a completely different universe in itself. So, and there's so many resources there. That's one. The second thing which I really learned from the Boston community as well as MIT is how to actually be open and talk to people and share. And that's like really important going forward. That is kind of ideology that I really learned at Boston, and I really love that for it. Third bucket list, there's BNID, Boston Network for International Development. There's City Awake, that's like social conference that happens in November. There is, I got programs from MIT. There's a MISTI program which will sponsor a student to go abroad and actually work in India. So anyone who is doing that, they should definitely look into that. Northeastern has the programs where they also collaborate with nonprofits to help them sort out some of the planning and fundraising part as well. So there are like N number of plans. And today I came to know more about Social Innovation Forum. It's just like you step out somewhere in Boston to some event and you'll discover a new social impact, a partnership or a resource.
Yeah, and I guess I'll just add one of the things I love most about Boston, and particularly in the startup world, is that people are solving so many different types of problems. I can't say there's any one niche or one industry or sector that we're known for, and I think that makes the community that much richer, that people are working in so many different areas and can collaborate in so many different and unique ways.
And I have one last question, and it'll be short for all of you. If you could have the whole classy crowd and the whole classy community help you with one thing, what would it be? I don't know that they can, but it's a good question to ask, and you've got thousands of people paying attention. So what might you hope for, either from this community or a broader community, to help the work that you're doing move forward?
Yeah, I guess I'd love to see more of a dialogue about impact investing and try to come to some consensus about what it means, so that those of us that are running social impact companies can better work together with the investors that are interested in helping to support our work.
Yeah. I think that's coming.
Cut the line.
I mean, I think my answer is pretty simple. I would love to see you all playing more, okay? Kids, adults, everybody needs to be playing. And so when you fill out your evaluations of the Classy Collaborative, one thing I want you to add to it is I want to have recess at our next collaborative next year.
There we go.
what I want is that all of you should talk about all of the amazing work that happens here by everyone. And if there's any way that there's any chance for partnership for any of us, that would be like really, really awesome. So please talk to everyone about anything that you know, to anyone you know.
Great. Great. Thanks for coming to the session. Best of Boston, showcasing innovation.
Cool.